good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Meet Touchstone Essentials Live, the product training edition. I'm here with Cindy Klement. Cindy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Craig. It's winter here in Michigan. We've got snow coming down.
Oh, wow. Snow coming down.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. We've had a little snow here in Utah, but we haven't got snow right now. It's been nice weather. Well, Cindy, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, is an acclaimed speaker, published author, nutritionist, herbalist, adjunct professor. She teaches the doctors about nutrition, and we're privileged and excited to have Cindy with us tonight. We're going to talk about the nervous system. I think I announced, if you came on and saw my announcement on Facebook, I sent out today that it was going to be about the structural system, but that was something you guys talked about while I was gone. So I apologize for that. Tonight we're talking about the nervous system. So Cindy, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Thanks for that nice introduction, and good evening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed Touchstone Essentials Wellness Summit last Saturday. I was certainly honored to be a part of that. As Craig mentioned, our meeting this evening is on the brain and nervous system, so let's get started. The brain is the most complex part of the human body. It's merely a 3-pound organ in our body, but it's the seat of our intelligence. It interprets our senses. It's an initiator of body movement, and it also is a controller of our behavior. Now, of course, it's this consistency, somewhat like Jell-O. It's very soft and squishy, so it requires that protection of our skull, where, by the way, it's also washed and protected by a cerebrospinal fluid. Now, interestingly, as such an important organ that it is very interesting to me that it would be so very fragile. But you hear about these football players that have all of these problems in their life because they've banged their heads so many times. So we really need to protect this brain, folks. We really do. Now, the nervous system itself is made up of billions of nerve cells, which are called neurons. And in fact, the human brain alone contains about 86 billion nerve cells, 86 billion nerve cells. And it's through this nervous system that we communicate with the outside world by taking in the information through our senses and then processing that information, which then triggers reactions such as making a muscle move or making us jump in horror or something like that. Metabolic processes are also controlled by the nervous system. And metabolic processes are basically a term that they use to describe a set of chemical reactions that occur in our cells in order to sustain life. And these metabolic processes can lead to growth or reproduction, and they allow us to respond to our surrounding environment. Now, as you see on the slide, the nervous system has 2 parts. It's the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, and they're named that way because of the location that they have in the body. So the central nervous system, which is centrally located, it includes the brain and the spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system means periphery. It's outside of the brain and spinal cord. It's made up of those nerves that branch off the spinal cord, and they go completely through our body, extending all the way to our body. And what these peripheral nerves do then is they relay that information between our brain and the rest of our body. So our nervous system is kind of like our electrical system, and our nervous system wires us together, if you will. Now we have those sensory nerves that connect our brain and spinal cord to the sensory organs, our ears, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our skin. And the sensory information is then carried through the nerves to the spinal cord and up into the brain so we can make sense of this information. For example, If you touch a hot plate, you pull back your hand, and your nerves then simultaneously send pain signals to the brain. Or if you smell something that's noxious, most of the time you'll either hold your breath or plug a nose. So this is the way our sensory nerves help to communicate with that brain and nervous system. We also have motor nerves, which connect our brain and spinal cord to our muscles to make our muscles contract and to produce movement. And then lastly, we have something called autonomic nerves. And these are the nerves that control the involuntary bodily functions and regulate our glands. Now, the autonomic nervous system, it's also called the automatic nervous system. It's constantly active, constantly, and it regulates things that we don't have to think about. It regulates our breathing, it regulates our blood pressure, it regulates digestion, and all these metabolic processes. And it does that by receiving signals from the brain and passing them on to the body. It can also send information in the other direction from our body up to our brain. So it can give our brain information on things like how full our bladder is, for instance, or how quickly our heart is beating. So in short, this autonomic or involuntary nervous system regulates the processes in our body that we can't consciously influence. Now, the autonomic nervous system can react quickly to changes by altering the processes so our body can adapt to these changes. For instance, if your body gets too hot, your autonomic or involuntary nervous system increases blood circulation to the skin, and it makes you sweat more to cool your body down. So this autonomic nervous system has kind of three different parts to it, and it's called the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and then that enteric nervous system. We've talked about this enteric or intestinal nervous system a lot when we talk about gut health and the gut microbiome. And it's that enteric nervous system where we have more neurons in our gut than we do in our entire brain and spinal cord. And the gut and the brain are connected by this large vagus nerve to send signals in a bidirectional communication. So if the gut is upset, it tells that brain. And if the brain is upset, it tells that gut. So we also have that as part of the autonomic nervous system. Now, it's the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that do opposite things in the body. So if we're excited or if we're stressed or if we're scared, it's the sympathetic nervous system that prepares our body for extra physical and mental activity. So imagine that you are, you see a child running in front of a car and you need this superpower. Well, what the sympathetic nervous system would do then is it would tense the muscles, it would make your heart beat faster and stronger, it would open your airways so you can breathe more easily, it would move blood away from the digestive organs, and it would slow down elimination. Because when you're in a crisis mode, the last thing you need to do is say, oh, but before I save that child, from the car, I have to use the bathroom. Right? So the sympathetic nervous system prepares you with this extra strength to do the job that you need to do. But on the other hand, as we relax and we unwind, it's the parasympathetic nervous system that does the opposite things. So now we're moving blood to the digestive organs. Instead of tensing the muscles, we're relaxing the muscles. Instead of inhibiting elimination, we're aiding elimination and digestion. And also the parasympathetic nervous system initiates healing and self-repair in the body. So we have this amazingly complex and I think really interesting body system that we need to learn an awful lot about. Now, nerves work by a combination of both electrical impulses and neurotransmitters. And you can see a gap there in between these two nerve cells. That's called a synapse. And these these neurotransmitters or chemical messengers and these electrical impulses, they cross that gap and go to the next nerve cell. And then their job is to either stimulate that nerve cell to keep that jumping in the body or inhibit it from firing another electrical impulse. Now, as I mentioned, these neurotransmitters are simply chemical messengers that the brain cells use and the nerve cells use to talk to each other. The total number of these neurotransmitters or chemical messengers is not known, but researchers believe that there are well over 100 different chemicals that our nerve cells use to talk with one another. And some of these neurotransmitters make the cells more active, and they're called excitatory chemicals, while the others kind of block or dampen the cell's activity, and they're called inhibitory. So let's just take a look at a couple of examples, for instance. So serotonin, most people recognize that one. That is a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger. And in your digestive tract, what serotonin would do is give you a feeling of satisfaction after you ate, and it keeps your appetite in check. Likewise, when a food you eat doesn't sit well with your stomach, it's serotonin that helps your body get rid of it. But in your brain, serotonin works a little bit differently. It has a tremendous influence on your mood. It promotes a feeling of wellness and happiness in the body. It also helps you achieve a more restful sleep. It can set your body's internal body clock, and it's also involved in temperature regulation in our body. Now, if we have levels of serotonin that are too high in the body, that can lead to seizures. If we have levels of serotonin in our body that's too low, it can cause sleep problems and depression. So we need just the right balance of these neurotransmitters in our body. Another neurotransmitter that you might be familiar with, especially if you're female, is oxytocin. And oxytocin can cause or strengthen labor contractions during childbirth, and it can also help to control the bleeding after childbirth. But oxytocin also helps your brain form strong connections of loyalty and trust, and it helps you to bond with those important relationships with your family and friends. So our bodies really need oxytocin for both its physical and its social health, so we can live and we can love. Now, another neurotransmitter that you might be familiar with, probably so, is adrenaline. And if you've ever been frightened before, you know that feeling comes from adrenaline. And this is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for the body's fight or flight in the body. Now, without the neurotransmitter GABA, our brain would be on all the time. So we need GABA to produce a more calming effect that helps to slow us down. It can lower our heart rate, it can lower our blood pressure, and help us relax and fall asleep. But the most thrilling of all the neurotransmitters has to be dopamine. And that's because it plays a major role in the brain's reward system. Now, what dopamine does is it floods that gap that you're looking at there with the little pink dots going back and forth in that synapse. It floods that synapse between those nerve cells when something rewarding happens. So it's responsible for that rush of joy when you accomplish a goal or you succeed at a task, and dopamine perks up your brain and brings feelings of pleasure. So these are really important things that we have to have in balance. So the nervous system is probably the most nutritionally sensitive system in our bodies. And long before we feel physical conditions, you might start to notice that kind of like you're having maybe some emotional conditions in the body or some mental conditions from poor nutrition. Maybe you've got things like fuzzy thinking, brain fog. Maybe you're a little bit more absent-minded. Maybe there's some mental confusion going on or nervousness. And as that nutrient depletion continues in the brain and nervous system, it can lead to chronic insomnia, anxiety, depression, and even memory loss. So again, how do we support such an important body system? Well, what the body needs, or what the brain especially, well, the whole body, but tonight we're talking about the brain, what it really needs to function at an optimal level are organic, because we'll learn about some of these things about pesticides and insecticides in a moment, but we need organic, multicolored superfoods, plants, proteins, essential fatty acids, and antioxidants. In fact, the antioxidants in essentials helps to boost and support your brain and the health of our eyes. And the eyes, of course, are a sensory organ. When we get these vitamins and minerals from organic plant sources and not from synthetic chemicals, we also support our brain. Now, I've mentioned antioxidants. In January, we're going to do a webinar on free radicals and antioxidants, because I want you to understand sometimes that's a little bit overwhelming, and I'm going to put it in really simple terms. But I love to give you this information so that you understand. I want to say both the complexity and the simplicity of these products, because they're so beautifully put together. They're very exciting products, and you can tell because I love teaching about them, but we'll get to antioxidants in detail in January. Now, essential fatty acids, they are the healthy oils that are shown in a plethora of studies to support our brain health. And unlike fish oils, plant-based oils provide the building blocks for our body to help make its own essential fatty acids. So in Wellspring's formula of organic plant oils, here we have a very rich source of plant-based omega fatty acids that will not only support all the cell membranes in our body, but also provide nourishment to the brain. Now, I mentioned the brain is kind of the consistency of a jello, very, very soft, but it's also very oily. The brain loves good fats. That's one of the best foods when you're trying to feed a brain and nervous system. So we just as an example, in multiple sclerosis, what happens is the nerve sheaths are deteriorating, and the body is, think of it as, again, it's our electrical system, so it's kind of shorting out in MS. And one of the most important things for MS are to get enough essential fatty acids to kind of help that nerve sheath and help those cell membranes from the damage. See where I'm at. Boost Focus Fuel. It contains organic rhodiola rosea, and it also has organic eleuthero root. Now, these are adaptogenic plants, adaptogenic herbs. And what that does is it helps to strengthen the body's response to stress. So the stress outside of us doesn't change, but it gives our body the ability to adapt to that stress and not react with such intensity as we may have before we had adaptogenics in our body. But adaptogenics also help to enhance our mood, our stamina, and our endurance, something that we need when we're under stress. Now, again, keep in mind that connection between the brain and the gut, as the gut is considered the second brain by communicating with that central nervous system. So think about it. Did you ever get a gut feeling? That is your second brain. So this mental stress can trigger gut problems, whereas gut problems can trigger brain and mood imbalances. And that's why these adaptogenic plants are so necessary for optimal brain health. Now, again, speaking of the gut and supporting that organ, we also then support the brain by by restoring that delicate balance of gut microbes in the gut with probiotics. And it's that good bacteria that keeps that bad bacteria in check. So super green juice gives us 4 different kinds of beneficial bacteria with approximately 1 billion what are called colony forming units in every serving. Likewise, Super Greens Plus D is more of a broad spectrum probiotic with over 5 billion colony forming units per serving. So your gut is replenished with both beneficial bacteria and prebiotic fiber in the form of inulin that helps prebiotic fibers then help support the growth of healthy bacteria in our gut. Now, just like every other body system, toxins and toxicants do affect the brain and nervous system. In human studies with volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, it indicated that just acute exposure, that doesn't mean chronic long-term, it means acute exposure can be neurotoxic, toxic to the nerve cells. VOCs can also affect our visual and motor skills and our cognitive functioning. Insecticides have been shown to interfere with normal brain functioning and nerve functioning. There are numerous health studies that have been associated with pesticide exposure to cancer of the brain. There are a lot of other adverse health effects of pesticides, including an increased rate of disruption of that dopamine transport in the brain. And we know that we need that dopamine because that just is that real good, feel good neurotransmitter. So luckily, we have an answer to that with a daily detox because now it's paramount. A daily detox is mandatory to our health, not just for our brain and nervous system, but for our entire body. I mention it every week because not one body system goes by where I can't find that this is so important to keep it healthy. Of course, you know, in the pure body, the zeolite particles are sized to detox both the body and the gut, but the pure body extra is where the zeolite particles are nano-sized to reach the body at that cellular level for this advanced cellular detox that we might need. And just as we do every week, I can never find a topic that we talk about where we don't need to feed the endocannabinoid system for that body system. So we need that homeostasis or balance in our brain and nervous system. And by feeding the endocannabinoid system with the cannabinoids found in CBD oil, we can help support and balance the brain and nervous system. There's a peer-reviewed journal, as you can see on the slide, the Surgical Neurological International. And in this research paper, they stated, and this is a quote from that paper, CBD's increasingly documented health benefits make it relevant in medicine. It is of particular interest due to its wide-ranging capabilities and lack of side effects in a variety of neurological conditions and diseases. Whereas in the Royal Society of London Biological Sciences, they stated, endocannabinoids in nervous system health and disease, it's the big picture in a nutshell. So CBD has been researched, and just everything we learn more and more about it, it too is something that we absolutely must have on a daily basis. And it's these products that can feed and support that endocannabinoid system. Remember, these products are organic, they're fast acting, they're highly absorbable, they're non-genetically modified, there have been no solvents used, no artificial ingredients, and they're also THC compliant, so you aren't going to have psychoactive effects. And folks, that concludes tonight's presentation. I hope you'll join us again on December 2nd. And what we're going to do then is learn about the nutritional content of the superfoods found in Touchstone Essentials products. Now, it's going to be the same format that we had back in September when we looked at the herbal medicine. We looked at the medicinal properties of the herbs found in Touchstone Essentials products. But this time in our next presentation, we're going to look at the foods, and we're going to look at the history of the foods and why these 30 superfoods, along with the 30 herbs, how they all work together, why they're so important. So I really hope you'll join us then. But in the meantime, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. And it's back to you, Craig.
Thank you, Cindy. It was so fun to learn about the nervous system and to learn about the gut-brain connection. I always think that's fascinating. The idea that the gut is the second brain has always just fascinated me. And to see these wonderful products that can make such a difference in people's lives. Thank you so much, Cindy. We appreciate you as always for your time and your expertise and your knowledge, and for sharing that with everybody on the screen today. And look forward to learning about food as medicine. That sounds like a really exciting topic, right?
I just finished it today and I was so excited about it.
Well, we're excited about it too. Thank you again so much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us tonight. We'll see you on December 2nd to learn a little bit more about food as medicine. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.